हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम बैक टू आवर यूट्यूब चैनल। और आज का जो हम टॉपिक कवर करेंगे, हम धर्मशास्त्र के बारे में बात करेंगे। यूपीएससी सीएसई सब्सक्रिप्शन प्राइस हाइक रिमाइंडर। द प्राइस विल इंक्रीज आफ्टर 24 अक्टूबर। 8,000 से 9,000 हो जाएगा, 20,000 से 22,500, 36,000 से 40,500, 44,000 से 49,500, फ्रॉम 64,000 टू 72,000 हो जाएगा। अभी जो प्राइस हाइक जो डेट है वो भी एक्सटेंड हो चुकी है, क्योंकि काफ़ी मल्टीपल रिक्वेस्ट आए थे बहुत सारे लोगों से कि जो ये डेट है वो बढ़ा दी जाए ताकि ये सब्सक्रिप्शन उन्हें मिले जो 10% डिस्काउंट है। तो आपको सिंपली ये कोड यूज़ करना है और आपको 10% डिस्काउंट मिलेगा। Unacademy Aspire is providing you with the All India free mock test for the civil servant aspirant under UPSC CSE Prelims 2021 Paper 1 JS, and it will be conducted on every 20th and 25th of every month. And we are providing you with the exciting prizes and scholarship for top 50 rank holders, and it will be conducted on 25th October at 10 a.m. sharp. So please enroll now. Unacademy full length mains mock test has been prepared for ethics for UPSC CSE, and we have free live special classes from 25th October at 9 p.m. sharp. So please enroll for this class. Then we have special batches for UPSC CSE mains 2020. We have advanced batch course of UPSC CSE mains 2020 bilingual that's already started from 19 October. We have advanced batch course for UPSC CSE mains 2020 for Hindi that actually started from 14th October, and we have the advanced batch course for the UPSC CSE mains 2020 English that has also started from 14th October. So you can enroll now for the special batches. UPSC CSE complete batch preparation course has already started from 19th and 26th October. We have 4 batches. The first batch is in bilingual, in which the medium of instruction is in Hindi English both. The second one is in Hindi completely. The third one is English, and the fourth one is for Mission 2022 for 2-year batch course for UPSC CSE. This one subscription has like unlimited benefits, like you can learn from your home, you have unlimited access to all courses, top educators, full syllabus coverage, double doubt clearing session, live test series, study material will be provided to you in form of PDF. You have answer writing sessions under our mentor and guidance. So this is also like a one-stop solution for you complete UPSC CSE preparation, because there are structured batches with top educators, batches in Hindi English bilingual, late night as well as 2-year batches, 100% syllabus coverage, vast range of optional, prelims test series, main test series. You have dedicated doubt clearing classes, daily current affair practice, essay and answer writing practice, performance analysis, and along with that will also prepare you for interview. So if you subscribe now, you will get 10% extra off. You just simply need to apply this code. We have T20 daily current affair test series that is completely free, and it will be provided to you at daily 7:30 p.m. with 20 questions for 20 minutes, and it consists for 20 marks. And along with that will also give you a test analysis. So click to join on YouTube, Telegram and Facebook. And if you really like our channel. So let's start with the topic Dharmashastra. As we know, the Indian political thought was like evolved by a great intellectuals in the ancient time, like the Manu and Kautilya played a very significant role in the as an ancient Indian philosopher, because they had like devised the highly valuable political and administrative ideas and policy. So in the era that actually began with the philosophical movement that was like expressed in the mystical text that was also known as Upanishads, ended in the government of the Emperor Ashoka, and whose rules like extended all over, but there was some southernmost India. So the dimensions of Indian social thought were also like established from here. So we can see like during all these like influential centuries, there was approximately from the 17th to the middle to the 3rd century, we can see there were like a lot of new approaches to the economic production, incorporation of indigenous people into the Aryan community, other social changes that was rendered the old agencies of integration, and the new social relationship that was demanding the new justification. So people also faced with a number of challenges of life that they need to reevaluate all the basic values and institutions. So there was like a numerous ideas that the nature and destiny of human life began to challenge the outmoded religious notions. So now let's understand what is basically Dharmashastra. As we know, the Shastra is basically deductive in nature, and the Shastras in Hindi means, in Hindu literature, basically means the text of spiritual and the legal duty. So the Shastra refers to the rule, command, code of law, or science, and these work basically focus on many different subjects. Like they include the three basic principles for the human life, and how a human life is governed on that: the dharma, arth, and karma. And the is basically dharma means law, arth means a wealth, profit, business, property, karma means basically passion, desire, and your pleasure. So dharma shastra is related to a dharma, means what we need to do, and this concept basically integrates the nature of the world as eternal cosmic law and the social law, and it is applied to all the rituals, life cycle, rites, um, procedures, resolving disputes, and the penalties for the defilements of these rules. So Dharma Shastra is just a genus of the Sanskrit text, and it refers to the treatises of Shastra of Hinduism on Dharma. And the Dharma Shastra, as we know, are the ancient law books of Hindus, which actually advocate the moral laws and principles that devote to the duty and righteous conduct of the followers of this faith. So they also shaped the guidelines for the social and religious code of conduct of Hindus in the past, where Hindu monarchs enforced the laws as part of their religious duty. However, we can see that looking at to the heterogeneity and the complex nature of our Indian society from the early time, it is very difficult to actually state that how seriously these laws were imposed by the ruling classes or by the rulers among the all the sections of society. However, we can also say that the Dharma Shastras highlighted upon the social, religious conditions of the ancient India, family life, gender, caste-based distinction, and the principle for the ancient jurisprudence. So it find them in the very rudiments, as many principles and practices of social and religious aspects were there in the modern Hindu civilization. Now let's talk about the origin. So as we know, as a sutra, we know is a very is known as a style of writing the treatise, and it was utilizing for the fewest possible words to ensure the brevity and easy memorization. So the Dharma sutras were basically along with the sutras, and the Griya sutras basically comprise of the Kalpa, and one among them was the Vedas, the auxiliaries of the Vedas. So the Sutras basically like deals with the great Vedic sacrifices of them and the Som and other religious matter that was relating to them. And the Griya Sutra is basically deals with the domestic ritual, and they maintain the minutes rules for the performance of various ceremonies and marking every important event of the individual's life from the conception to the cremation. So Dharma Sutras basically deals with the social usage and customs of our everyday life, and in them we also like begin to see a very civil and criminal law also. So there were important Dharma Sutras like Gautam Sutra, then Bodhyan Sutra, we have Astama Sutra also, to name a few of them. Then let's talk about the historical review of them. So as we know, Shastras included the Dharma Shastra that we categorize as the Smriti. A Smriti means a word indicating what is remembered. It is distinct from the Veds and Upanishads, which means Shruti, that means what is heard. So Veds and Upanishads are like deliberated to divinely perceive, that is the early shares that I used to have like perceive the eternal truths, and the Dharma Shastra as well as the other Smriti texts. So all these thoughts, explanations of Hindu scholars were in the response to the Shruti books. And chronologically, we can see the sutras of Dharma Shastras follows like following the sometime the Vedic period, and the books has been like extremely difficult to date. So most researchers agree that the first three sutras are basically selection that includes a volume of Gautama, Astama, and Vashishta. So basically they fall in sometime between the 6th century BC to the 1st century, and from time their composition and the works of Dharma Shastra had played a very vital role in influencing the Hindu culture and law. So in fact, all these like Shastras were very like cited many cases of the legal contracts till the mid 19th century in the some regions of India. Now let's talk about the Manu. As we know that the Dharmashastras basically asserted to be very divine of origin, and they have to be like transmitted from the ancient saints who cannot be recognized as a very historical figure. But Manu is also like a found like one of the early as the Rig Veda, which was which he is pronounced as the father of Manu, as the ancestor of the human race. So in the basically the Sapta Brahman was around 900 BCE, and Manu was evidently the father of mankind. And when he follows the advice of fish and builds a ship in which he alone among the men survives the great flood. So afterwards, we can see that he worships and performs penance of and the women, and we had like Ida that produce, and he starts making the mankind with her. So Manu was the first king and the first to spark the sacrificial fire. And as the inventor and the moral order, he is also Rishi who discloses the most authoritative of the Dharma Shastras. So Manu's text, Manusmriti, is also the earliest Dharma Shastras, and till date it is not. Its date is still it's not clear, because it was somewhere between 2200 BCE to 100 CE. This is probably the reach the present form around the 2nd century CE. So we can see in the section of the text of Raj Dharma, the king's son, and the passages of Hindu law. These passages were first noted by the Western scholars, so this text became the laws of Manu. Now let's talk about the Manusmriti, the text. So as we know, the Manusmriti like gives a very importance to all the ruling groups that actually the invading people such as the Shakyas, Palwas, and the Greeks were also called as the Yavanas, because in the Manusmriti there was a cooperative with the new social realities of the theoretical pattern. So the Yavana, Shakas, and Pallava and the other foreign like trespassers were also described as Manu, as last as the Kshatriyas of the warrior of class. And these warriors had actually lost their status for not following their dharma, but by performing appropriate sacrifices and acknowledging the Brahman as the religious text leaders, and they could not come into the fold of the Orthodox community. So during the 4th century, we can see the writing of mature like Dharma Shastra was like fully thriving, and in this period we can see the rules of caste were being systematically enforced by Brahmanical dynasties for the first time after the centuries of foreign rule. And there were like other aspects of this Manu's text which actually brought the theory with the actual practice of social reality. And in this theory of mixed caste, he also developed a system combination of the 4 classes, that is ones, and producing many castes, that is a jati. So already the occupational groups and the had already been set up in a very close pattern by the method of the endogamy that was practice of a jati. So Manu was fitting in this theory to the facts. It was also debated that the Dharmashastras highlighted an ideal picture that did not correspond to the real life. But however, we can see the Dharmashastras, those styles and systematically were the collection of the existing customs and practices that were provided to the overall theoretical framework for everyone to practice their traditionally recognized way of life. So in this period, we can see the 1st century AD, and the text Dharma Sutras text basically reworked in the verse form, and the social and religious regulation of the Orthodox Brahmin culture was systemized. So these codes were accepted as the authentic guides of law, custom, and duty. So we can see since many centuries they attained a very like stature comparable to all the Vedic hymns. And although it is not possible to assess whether there was any law or codes were purposely employed for the guidelines that supported the coercive sanctions. So we can see in the beginning of the 16th century, there were several streams of cultural creativity among the Bengali Hindus, and one of them was the Shiromani in the field of Dharma Shastra. So now what's the meaning of Dharma that we're talking about Dharma Shastra? So in Hinduism, Dharma is basically an extravagant concept with different meanings. So it basically primarily means that it actually guarantees the orderly development, creation, and existence by preserving its own foundational structure by supporting mechanism, values, orders, and regularity. So Hinduism has been described as one of the like self-appointed duties of Hindus in order to shield the worlds and beings by enforcing the dharma that is not like specific to each of them. So the rules of dharma were like worldwide in a sense, because the primary source is God only. And however, there are variations in the rise implementations that are applied at the different levels. and at different worlds according to the duties, roles, responsibilities are given to them. So Dharma Shastra were predestined for the people who are sure to the worldly world, and because of the ignorance, immoral karma, delusion, desire, who also engage in desire-ridden action. So for such people, there was a proper guidance that was required for like differentiating the legal act that was from the unlawful, performing such duties that follows the directly God will ensure the orderly development of the world and preservation of the moral, social, and political order. So Dharma Shastra are just like not just product of the divine revelations like the Veds, but therefore they cannot. They are also not like susceptible to the imperfect to which the human mind was prone. But yet we cannot cast them to any away from the mere intellectual works that was limited vision. So they shape with the care to provide like guidance from a divine perspective, and in them they were like people will find them to be very sincere attempt to provide a very practical solution to the possible social disorder and a disarrangement and the moral confusion was there. So in them people basically find the divine wisdom as a purified and the human mind that was like filtered by the perceptive intelligence, and hence they were also considered as the smriti rather than the shruti. So we can also like signifying the collective wisdom of the spiritual leader, teachers, scholars, rulers, and the lawmakers who were instrumental in the creation and implementation. So this book actually very it prescribed them the best possible solution to all the problem to the each class of beings to chase the four principle of dharma, that was earth, come, and moksha. But in doing, they were not just like completely free from their caste that favored only very few social classes. So they actually decide a veiled attempt by the clear minds to ensure the status quo and preserve their own socio-economic and political privileges in order for two of the select caste. So we can see the rules of the human conduct. We can see that this was like the use of authority of God and religion together, that the dharma shastra attempted to ensure a very order and regularity in the world on the ongoing basis, and they were like not just like completely successful, evident in the decline in the jurisdictional power, but there was also decline in power of Hindu rulers in the Indian subcontinent. So we can see on the positive side, they created a proper framework to imagine the ideal human conduct, and the standards were basically in order to distinguish them from right to wrong, and they laid down the elaborative rules to oversee the human conduct and instill the fear of moral and temporal power. So some of the rules and principles were very like unfairness prescribed in Dharma Sutras are bound to offend the sensibilities of present day educated Hindus who were heavily influenced by the modern ideas, education that brought up the values of equality, fraternity, liberty, and social and moral justice. So many verses in them stand in contrast to all like the modern values and sound like the retrogressive. So we can see that many people study them and they suspend their judgment and they weigh the knowledge from an academy and historical standpoint of view as a as a work in progress. So it is also like reckless to use them for the reference of rationalization of any social or gender inequality in the current society to make an argument that the people must draw inspiration from them to regulate their own social conduct. So people may also like take a very few principles that was like still valid in the present day world, was basically to observe them in their lives, but they cannot use it as a reasonable point to argue their universal version. Now, what is Manusmriti? We know Manusmriti was an ancient and the most prominent of the Dharma Shastras, and the laws of Manu were also perhaps very famous part of the Dharma Shastra, and it was written in the later part of the epic period, and often they were given separate recognition because of their unique style. So the laws of Manu communicated extensively on the regulation of the aspect of Hindu life, including the rules governing religious offerings, purifications, rites, and many other religious and social practices. So this was like any other Hindu thought that generally differentiates between unpermitted and the permitted suicides. And the book 5 was suicide were grouped the heretics that actually failed to perform the appropriate religious rites and those who mixed caste also. So book 6 was there to basically compare the code that compares a person like who's alive to a servant who's awaiting the payment from their masters, and explaining them what one should actually do, neither the desire to die nor the desire to live. So there were like many other phrases and laws of Manu which actually like emphasized upon the value of leaving the body and becoming free of pains and torment, and by achieving the full liberation from the worldliness and desire. So the book 6 and 9 also indicated the means by which the Brahmin, the renunciate, also sought to like separate himself from his body, and it was based on the teaching of the four stages that develop into a very detailed text in detail in the laws of Manu. And it was like where it actually became very old and was passed through the previous stages to the life. And one should like simply walk in the northeastern direction, the version without food and water until one dies. It was also stated one becomes a sannyasi and he attains a very high level of spirituality. So this expedition that the ends in death is often called as the great departure. So as a broad social conduct we can code also, we can see that Manusmriti served as a very authoritative conductor for Hindu jurisprudence for a long time in the Indian social history. And in terms of authority admiration, it also had very important place that was next to the Veds, and from which it derives its authority. It was usually considered as the most influential work of Hindu law. So to elaborate its sacred law, these all these treaties includes addition to its sacred tradition that individual of the conscious, an example of the virtuous men. So this allowance must also be made to the local custom, and the past usage must also be considered in settling the legal clashes. So the king also like assumed to be like divinely created and ordained to shield the people from the cruel state of nature, and the abolition of absolutism was there in European divine right argument is not found in the conception. So the king basically tried to embody the virtues of the eight deities. His authority was derived from the divine nature of the office and the significance of crucial role in the preservation of the social order. It was also said that all the like depiction of monarchy was found in Manusmriti, Mahabharata, that was also based on the hereditary kingship, and the caste distinctions were also made product of divine as a result of the social necessity. So the Brahmin dominance was described and justified in very like in a very like exaggerated terms, and Manusmriti and many law books the punishment includes the severity as the social status weakened. So as we know, the Manu's text like contains 12 chapters. We can oversee your table also that has the various topics and the number of verses that was there. And there were 12 chapters, 2685 verses, which was evident that was translated from by the say Walla to the other scholars. There were like social responsibility, obligation, duty of various castes, individual, different stages of life, the way of a perfect, righteous king of rules punishes the criminals, and we have social relationship between man and woman of different castes, and the husband, wife, and privacy of house, birth, death, taxes, cosmogony. Then we have karma, rebirths. Then we have ritual practices, error, and restoration also. So we can see in this value work, Manu was in the following text elaborative on the origin of universe as a role and ritual by keeping promises to attending the teacher, kinds of marriages, regulations of great sacrifices, obligatory rules of ceremonies of the dead, and for questioning witnesses, various means of livelihood, vows, um, that was Vedic graduate, then kinds of food to be eaten, purification, cleansing, impurities, duty of women, husband, wife, and the heretics, their freedom, renunciation, participation of property, gambling, cleaning out thorns, attendance of commoners, servants, origin of the confused classes. We have religious duties of all classes in extremity, and the rules of restoration, and the supreme good for the examination of virtues of the past action, and the obligatory duties that has been given to them. So it was just a dharma like which also like covers the religion, duty, law, justice, and principle. So it describes the religion was entirely like based on the good and bad effect of their past action, and external code of conduct for the four classes of people. So this code was also the highest law and was described and revealed in the canon and tradition. So it was based on the twice born person who self-possessed and should always practice it, and he was, and if he fails to do it, he does not like reap any fruit of faith. So Manu's text was basically based on the ancient that the ancient cannot be ignored for its comprehensiveness. It covers family, psychology, human body, relationship between humans, animals, attitude toward money, possession, politics, law, caste, purification, pollution, rituals, social practices, ideals, world relation, renunciation, and worldly goals. So Manu's teachings inspired like a lot of humans to fulfill their own promises, liberate himself from all the like consequences of their past deeds. So now let's talk about this Smriti. So except Manusmriti, we had the code of the Yajnavalkya, which actually means to attain a supreme position in Hindu jurisdiction. And when it is founded by individuals as this Hindu society, was the rules that laid down by Manu needed to be revised. So this collected his own code around this, and however we can say the Smriti was same in the pattern as was Manusmriti, and there it was, but it was more scientific and systematic. And we can see the Manu's authority is unquestioned by all Hindus, and its law of Yajnavalkya also like which was really governed. So it contains 1010 verses divided in three chapters, and on these matters there were women rights of inheritance, right to property, and criminal penalty. And this was like much more liberal than Manusmriti. So we can even thought that this was played a very deep influence on Buddha and had a great impact on his society. And it also found to itself to express the form of more human provisions of law. So when comparing the Manusmriti text, it was in brief also very scientific, practical. So now let's come on to this Smriti. So this Smriti consists of 1028 verses, and Dr. Jolly also translated the Smriti pronunciation to Great. Smriti was later than the 380, and it was just not quoted by Kautilya, but so he must have been like certainly after Kautilya, not just prior him. The Smriti deals with the forensic law, both substantive and technical, without reference to the penance and other religious matters. It deals with the courts and the judicial procedure. It also like tries to lay down some of the laws that are regulating the 18 titles with a great clarity. He was independent interpretation, and he did not allow himself with the earlier text. So it was the basically Hindu political thought of faith, where king consider himself not just as a creator law but also the guardian. So we can see this was the most authoritative of Indian writer. He stressed upon the king must obey whether it's right or wrong in his actions, and it was refers to the four successive versions of Manu code, and the principle of Hindu political thought was based on the faith that the king must consider himself not as a creator of law but also as a guardian also. So we can see there was a very like this was very authoritarian, and the original text had like a 1000 something 1 lakh, oh sorry, 1 lakh something shloks and 70 chapters that was first given to them. Then we can see how in the third the century we can see there was a growing appreciation for the need to relate the law, traditional changing social condition, and in the work there was codes of the legal authorities. It contended with the proclamation must synchronize with the customary and the sacred law and departures from the original Raj Dharma. Then we have the judicial officers that was generally to be filled with the Brahmins, since no man could be like judged on the one basis at least of the social equal, and since the sin was also involved in the crime must also be judged. So the earliest court of law was likely to the king's palace, and by the time of Dharmashastras, and there was many. It was very specializing in the formal institutions also. Now let's talk about the revenue. So basically, there was a political explanation given to Dharmashastras alike than Arthashastra, because the tax revenue was seen as the king's very equitable due in return to his security that he provided to everyone. So for social stability, the legal theorists also argued on the elaborate statecraft of Kautilya, and there was a military action to conform to the code of conduct. The method of balance of power was understood. Alliance were made among the major assets of state. The Hindu political theory diplomacy was also built on the interrelationship of state, and it was gracefully labeled also. So this theory mandala was also like based on the assumption of king nature aspires to conquest, and the neighbor is enemy, natural aligned kingdom to the opposite edge of the opponent also. So it is also well known that the Dharma Shastras give very much importance to the aspect of Dharma, the science of Dharma, as also text also to teach them the eternal immutable Dharma in the Veds. And this term denotes with the numerous codes of Hindu and civil codes laws that are there, and it is expanded, remodeled in the various verses to form in Dharma Sutras. Both on the language and text has been commonly translated into law books, and dharma basically means a great deal more than law. And the classical Hindu rebel, there's no distinction between religion and law. So on the basis of the legal terms of dharma is a system of natural laws with the specific rules that are derived from the ideal, moral, eternal order of the universe. And the most the statement was found in the Dharmashastra and Dharmashastra. They were divided into three categories: the rules of good conduct, legal procedure, and the penance. So this was prescribed the rules for society in which the individuals might live according to dharma, and they were credited to the ancient rishis or the seers or the sages, and there was a description of the legal literature in Sanskrit that was made. So dharma also upholds the individual, it sustains one, it leads to happiness, obligation, duty, sacred laws, moral order, practicing various truths, responsible, and dharma shastra or the science of law contain the dharma sutras and smritis. Now let's conclude this presentation. So as we know, the Manu was one of the most important figure of this time, and he made the law book of Manu. That was also the Manusmriti as one of the famous texts. And there was many form of dharma that was exposed by the Brahma to Manu. The first man passed on to Bhrigu, one of the 10 spears or sages. A divine theory was claimed by the Dharmashastra to enable their great acceptance. And Manusmriti designates the creation of the world by Brahma, the Manu's own birth, the sources for Dharma, and the main ceremonies for the 4 stages also of life. So in order to reach the 4th stage of renunciation, it was very necessary to pass through all the 3 stages of duties of king, and there were other chapters which actually deals with the mixed class caste, rules of occupation, relation to the caste, occupation, and everything. So we can see there was a theoretical textbook that Manusmriti also wrote, practicalities of life and the human conduct also. And there were a lot of books that came after Manusmriti also, and the Dharma Shastra was nearly a pure legal textbook for the Hindus, and Manusmriti is considered to the superior to other Dharma Shastras also.